Welcome to Sinking Spring Cemetery, a cultural and historical landmark in the heart of Abingdon, Virginia. Please join us as we take a short virtual tour across the grounds with Stuart Matthis, who loved the history and stories of the cemetery like no other.
This was Henry Cresswell. This is the first grave in this cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And this tombstone here this tells you the same story here. This was placed here by the citizens of Abingdon around the turn of the century. I've forgotten exactly. Maybe it tells on here. But it says Henry Cresswell. Monument was erected by the citizens of Abingdon to mark the grave of Henry Cresswell, who was killed by the Indians
near this place.
He was the first person buried in this cemetery. The original slab at the foot of the grave. So that's the one that they're referring to. Inscription: Henry Cresswell entered this place July 4, 1776. Isn't that you couldn't make that up. The first guy was buried here on July the 4th, 1776.
That's pretty amazing.
I'm guessing that this was put here about 1900. There seemed to be because that obviously he's not been here since 1812 when he died.
He died with his boots on. He was still the pastor when he died.
Yeah, it says, but I don't think that's correct. Not to challenge his tombstone, but I think there was a split. The church, the history of the Presbyterian Church is just schism after schism after schism. And he sued the church because I think they quit paying him.
This is Governor David Campbell.
Yeah, it's funny that he went from he was a county clerk. Politics was funny in those days because governors were elected by the legislature until I believe the Virginia rewrote their constitution and amended their constitution in 1851, I believe, and they were elected by the legislature. So he was the clerk here of the court, and he goes to governor, and he comes back, and he's the justice of the peace. Justice of the peace is not a real powerful office anymore. You see, I think it tells it on here. Was Lieutenant Colonel, 20th Regiment, U.S. Army in the War of 1812. Senator in Virginia legislature, 1820 to 1824. clerk of Washington County Court, 1824 to 1837, governor of Virginia, 1837 to 1840. Then he came back. I don't think it tells.
They're not going to tell you that part.
Here's his wife, Mary Hamilton, wife of David, Governor David Campbell. But one thing we got to Frank.
Tells who made it.
Yeah, getting a little advertisement on the tombstone. Hell, I'm not allowed that.
Right.
I don't approve of that.
Gaddis Brothers Ball, Maryland.
Anyway, one thing we got to thank this guy for is he wrote his memoirs of his boyhood in Abingdon, and he's telling about all these characters that lived here. And before court, people would set up down on Main Street, sell stuff. Yeah, there was one lady there. Her name was Suki. He called her Suki. Suki Callahan, I believe was her name. And it was illegal to sell whiskey then. But what Suki would do, she would put one kernel of corn in a bottle, and she'd fill it full of whiskey.
Yeah.
And she was selling that kernel of corn for whatever she wanted for it. And the whiskey came free. She wasn't selling the whiskey. And it says on here, the fire of Southern manhood or something fell. It says he was the judge of this county.
Resigned the judgeship of the 12th Virginia Circuit and laid down his life in the bloody field of Cold Harbor, the 40th year of his age.
And it gives the date on
Where was
here.
Cold Harbor?
Cold Harbor was up at. This is what got me confused.
Sounds like Maine.
It's on the outskirts of Richmond.
It is, but it's not a harbor.
Well, see, notice he said it fell mortally wounded, June 27, 1862.
Died the next day.
Died the next day.
39.
Okay, first time I came through here with Jane, I looked at that because at the time I was a big Civil War buff. I told you I used to read everything about Civil War, and I said that's not right. I said the Battle of Cold Harbor was in 1864, about the same, in July, as a matter of fact, about the same time. I said that's not correct. So I got onto this thing and ran it down. What really happened was he was killed at the Battle of Gaines' Mill, which was part of what was called the 7 Days Battle. You know, if you remember, McClellan came down by water and landed at Yorktown, and he was going to come up the peninsula and take Richmond. And Stonewall Jackson, this Fulkerson was in Stonewall's outfit. Stonewall came over and met him there, and they whipped him, give him a good whooping. And he went back to Yorktown with his tail between his legs. But anyway, there was a series of battles there that's called the 7 Days Battle. They fought for 7 days. They didn't quit fighting for 7 days. They slept on their rifles. And one of the battles there was called Gaines' Mill. And that's where this guy fell. But it's at the same location of Cold Harbor. Well, I said John Bradley, he was a private.
Shelby's Company.
Shelby's Company.
Fincastle Troops.
Husband of Sarah Lillard. Well, Al Bradley is a direct descendant, and you know Betty Ringley. She was a Bradley, and those are two people that are direct descendants of John Bradley. And he had a huge tract of land here. It covered all of where exit 14 now is. He had a big tract of land there, maybe 500 acres or something. It probably includes everything around exit 14 now. So if he was here, they'd be trying to build a Walmart right on his farm. Well, I bet he would have taken offense to that, don't you?
Yeah, probably so.
Anyway, that's John Bradley. This one is the one that just makes you want to stand here and cry. Look at that, the grief on that lady, the McKees. And the workmanship in that thing is tremendous. Just look how beautiful that thing is. I mean, the quality of the work, those fluted columns, and the broken shaft is symbolic of life interrupted by death, and the wreath at the top is symbolic of the final victory, eternal life in heaven. But these people, I don't know much about them. I've got to research them, but they didn't have much luck. I know that. It tells their whole story right here on this tombstone. I guess the grief is none of them lived very long. See, there's William McKee, died in Abingdon in 1833, aged 50 years. He was the oldest one of all of them. And Phoebe Elizabeth, his wife, she died in the 31st age 31 years. She died in 1825. So, you know, life interrupted by death. And then on the back is their children. Decatur, their son, born in Abingdon, first aged 1 year. See, people didn't live long. Julia Ann, their daughter,
she was 13.
She was 13, and
and then Henry Ogden drowned near Kingsport on the 25th of July, 1819, age 28. And then
Claiborne,
Sarah Claiborne, wife of H.O. McKee, and she died at the age of 20.
Gosh. None of them live very long.
And H.O. is Henry, who drowned. Yeah.
Everybody wants a little piece of mortality. Yeah. Immortality, not mortality.
We all got that.
This monument is erected by the survivors to their deceased parents, brothers, and sisters. The memory of the just is blessed. Providence 10:7. But the next line of that, if you look up in Providence and read the next line in that, it says, but the name of the wicked shall perish, or something like that. The memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked is destroyed, or something. It's got something like that.
John Henry Martin.
John Henry and Melinda.
And Melinda. And what's their story? Why are they here?
They don't have much of a story, but they built that, actually it's a stone structure that's been covered with earth. And
why'd they build it like that?
I guess they must have, I don't know. But if I was going to guess, I would say they thought that mound of earth would protect the stone building. I've seen those things where it's just a stone building built, and actually it's just two people buried in there, old John Henry and Melinda.
Melinda.
Well, I think he's not from around. He came in here, and we've got his obituary over at the Historical Society. But he liked to marry rich women, and apparently Melinda was rich, and he married her. This is I'm doing a lot of guessing, but see John Henry Martin.
Yeah.
He was born in 1824. I've forgotten where he's born, but we've got his obituary. They built this in the 1850s, and
oh, they built it long before he died.
Oh yeah, he didn't die in 1890.
1899.
And the story about this is that during the Civil War, old John Hunt Morgan was a Confederate raider, and he went by stealing people's chickens. People in the South would kill me for saying that, but they didn't like him over in Kentucky, where I'm from. And he burned up railroads and did mayhem to the...
Mean stuff.
Well, it depends on your viewpoint. What does it mean? It's war. But before he died in 1864, John Hunt Morgan, he had been through Kentucky, as I said, doing bad stuff, and they captured him up in Ohio, and he was a prisoner of war. And he escaped and came back to Abingdon and raised another troop of raiders, and he went down in northeast Tennessee, and he was doing the same thing down there, except this time he was down there with some other woman, which he shouldn't have been doing.
Did he have a wife back here?
Yeah, down in Lexington.
Oh, okay.
And anyway, this lady's daughter, so that's Yankee territory down there, northeast, still full of Republicans, and you all don't like it, but that's the truth. And what was I going? Oh, they captured him. They surrounded his house. It's in Greenville. The house is still there. You can go. They surrounded his house and killed him. And they hauled him around Greenville and took him off had him drooped over a horse.
Oh.
And they got a special. The Confederates arranged for a truce, and they got a special train to bring him back to Abingdon. And he lived out in Ackley. At Ackley, you know the building out here? Ackley.
Where's that?
Well, it's right across from the high school. You know when you cross that bridge?
Oh, yeah.
That big Victorian
that big white
yeah,
farmhouse. Okay.
Yeah, that was.
Okay.
That was Campbell. I think Judge Campbell lived there. He let him live there, and I doubt if his wife was here. She was probably still in Lexington. But anyway, it was the biggest funeral ever held in Abingdon. It was I think John Breckinridge, was the vice president of the Confederacy. I don't remember my history that well, but he was.
That's right.
Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. And he led the parade. It was over 2 miles long.
Huh?
It's further than 2 miles from here to the Episcopal Church, but that's where his funeral was held. And it was in September of 1864. And of course, John Hunt Morgan was a great hero here in the South because these people just loved him. But when his funeral was late in the afternoon, and in the West, there was an air of somberness or foreboding in the air that their hero was fallen. And the first time the people here realized that all was lost.
Life
must
of
have been.
John Gibson.
Okay. John Gibson was a guy that came down here. He wasn't born here, but he came down here early in the century and married. They were married by Reverend Cummings. Reverend Cummings married these two. There's a record of it in the marriage logs. And they have a daughter named Jane Cummings Gibson. Jane Cummings Gibson married Reverend McChaney, my hero. Born May 25th, 1946.
1846.
1846, excuse me.
Died. Oh, he lived a long time.
He lived 101 years.
Henry H. Scott. What was
Henry Hopkins
Why did
Scott.
you like him so much?
Well, he was my kind of man. He started off in life with one pig, and he started trading pigs. He wound up owning about half of Abingdon. And one thing that he's known for, they called him Hop Scott. It must have had something to do with his
walk,
personality or something. He was a wheeler dealer he was the first wheeler dealer, and he got into all kinds of business deals, but he was big in livestock. And apparently, for some reason, he went to New Orleans. They must have had stock sales or something down there. And he saw the old French Quarter. And so when he came back to Abingdon, he built this Belmont Hotel.
Oh, okay.
It stands where the post office is now.
It did, yeah, I remember it.
It stood there.
Yeah.
I remember it too. It was torn down back in the 60s, I think. But it looked like New Orleans. It had those balconies, those roofs too.
Yeah, and it was red, wasn't it?
Well,
I think it was the black.
There were different businesses in it besides the hotel. And before I was too young to have known about stuff like that. But some folks says that was a house of ill fame.
That's what I've always heard. And that they used to hang off the balcony and talk to people who passed by underneath.
Well, I can't give any personal testimony to that.
Good. William Fields the son.
And he was a brother of James Fields. You know, they were all brick masons. They built a lot of this stuff. This William Fields built Nancy's Fancies. That's where he lived. And he also built the first courthouse that was built in 1851. Then, after the courthouse was burned, his brother James, who built Fields Penthouse, rebuilt the courthouse.
They were into it.
So these Fields were all famous brick masons, and I guess a brick mason in those days was more than a brick mason. He was sort of an architect,
really skilled,
builder, and a lot of stuff. So he built a lot of houses during that, a lot of the brick houses.